Welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share this video with a fellow football fan. It really does help the channel grow. Now, let's get into it. Arsenal are back on top of the Premier League. 1 goal, 3 points, and a whole lot of nerves at the Emirates. That was the story on Saturday as Mikel Arteta's side edged out Newcastle United 1-0 in what turned out to be one of the most anxious afternoons of their title campaign so far. Let's set the scene. Arsenal had been knocked off the summit just days earlier when Manchester City beat Burnley on Wednesday. That result meant the Gunners came into this one needing a win, not to stay in the race, but to stay in front. The pressure was enormous, and for large parts of this game, that pressure was written all over Arsenal's performance. But before we talk about the struggles, let's talk about the moment that won this match, because it was absolutely special. 9 minutes in, a short corner routine. The ball finds its way to Eberechi Eze on the edge of the box, and what he does next is pure class. He doesn't take a touch to set himself up. He doesn't wait. He just hits it, a stunning, perfectly struck effort that gives Nick Pope absolutely no chance. 1-0 Arsenal, and the Emirates erupts. Now, he's only joined Arsenal in the January transfer window, and he has been something of a wildcard addition, a player with moments of brilliance who you're never quite sure is going to produce. But in the biggest moments of this title race, he keeps stepping up. Martin Odegaard summed it up perfectly after the game, calling it a brilliant finish and crediting the work done on the training ground for the corner routine. Jamie Redknapp went further, saying Eze was the real difference, a moment of genuine individual quality in a game where fear was strangling everyone else around him. And that word, fear, is interesting, because Redknapp used it deliberately. And honestly, watching Arsenal in this period of the season, you understand exactly what he means. These are technically excellent players. These are players who have done this at the highest level for years. But when you are this close to winning the Premier League title, a trophy this club has not won in over 2 decades, something changes. The simple things become difficult. The passes that normally just happen suddenly feel heavy. And that weight showed against Newcastle. After Eze's goal, Arsenal should have kicked on. They had the crowd behind them. They had the lead. But instead of building momentum, they stagnated. They were sloppy in possession. They gave Newcastle, a team that had come into this match on a terrible run of form, losing their previous 3 league games, too much encouragement. And Newcastle, to their credit, took it. Bruno Guimaraes and Sandro Tonali were both excellent in the middle of the park for the visitors. They pressed, they competed, and they made Arsenal uncomfortable throughout. And as the second half wore on and the clock ticked into stoppage time, it started to feel like Newcastle might actually find a way back into it. The biggest chance came late. Nick Woltemade, who had come on as a substitute, played a clever pass through to Yoane Wissa, and for a moment, the Emirates held its breath. 1-on-1 with the goalkeeper, this was a chance that could have completely changed the day. But Wissa fired it over, and Arsenal survived. Now let's talk about the injury situation, because this is something Arteta is going to have to manage very carefully heading into a massive week. Kai Havertz came off in the first half. He didn't look comfortable, and he went straight down the tunnel after receiving treatment. Never a great sign. Then, in the second half, Eze himself went down off the ball and had to be substituted. 2 of Arsenal's most important attacking players, both leaving the pitch before the final whistle. Arteta tried to play it calm in his press conference, saying they were muscular niggles and that the medical team didn't think it was too serious. Eze himself said his substitution was only precautionary. But you can understand why Arsenal fans are worried. Because on Wednesday, this Arsenal side traveled to Atletico Madrid in the Champions League. And if either Havertz or Eze is unavailable for that, the task becomes significantly harder. There was also a major controversy involving Newcastle goalkeeper Nick Pope. Late in the first half, Victor Gyökeres, who had come on as a substitute, chased a long ball in behind the Newcastle defense. Pope came rushing out of his goal to try and deal with it, but he clearly fouled Gyökeres in the process. It was a reckless challenge outside the penalty area, and Arteta was absolutely furious. He said after the game that he had watched it back 10 times, and that anyone who has ever played football would know it was a red card. The referee only showed Pope a yellow. Arsenal had to play out the remainder of the game without that numerical advantage, and with a 1-0 lead that never felt secure. Arteta also made an interesting point in his press conference. He noted that this is the second time in recent games where a clear red card has not been given against Arsenal in a crucial moment. The other incident he referenced was in the Manchester City game, when Kai Havertz was fouled through on goal. These are the fine margins of a title race, and Arteta clearly feels his team is not getting the protection from officials that they deserve. Bukayo Saka came on as a late substitute, his first appearance since the Carabao Cup final loss to Manchester City last month. He looked sharp almost immediately, putting a deflected effort narrowly wide and then helping create an opening for Odegaard, who was denied by Pope. There will be plenty of optimism that Saka's return gives Arsenal that extra gear they have been missing. From Newcastle's side, this was actually an improved performance despite the loss. Eddie Howe acknowledged that his team are going through a difficult spell, losing games even when they look the strongest side. But he also pointed out that this showing, competitive, organized, threatening at times, was a big step forward. Whether that translates into results in the coming weeks remains to be seen. So where does this leave the title race? Arsenal sit 3 points above Manchester City. City have a game in hand. The pressure is relentless. Gary Neville, speaking after the match, suggested that if Arsenal do end up winning the league this season, it will feel less like winning it and more like falling over the line. That might sound harsh, but watching this Arsenal team right now, so talented, so well-drilled, and yet so visibly affected by the weight of expectation, it's hard to completely disagree. What is undeniable, though, is that they keep finding ways to win. That is what champions do. 3 points is 3 points, and Arsenal have them. Wednesday brings Atletico Madrid, one of the most hostile atmospheres in European football. Arteta's side have already shown this season that they can compete at the very highest level in the Champions League. But with injury doubts over key players and the weight of a domestic title race pressing down on them, this is arguably the biggest week of their season. Can they handle it? That's the question every Arsenal fan is asking right now. We'll be covering all of it right here on the channel. So if you haven't already, subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on Arsenal's title chances, and share this with someone who loves the beautiful game. Until next time, take care, and we'll see you in the next one.